has about 3.5 years of experience, is the most experienced person in terms of their RezLife experience here. I say all that because I think that's really important, that we have a lot of diverse kinds of points of view, and not a lot of them has the contextual wisdom of what RezLife has been over the last 25 or 30 years. So I've done a lot of great listening. Jason Gant and I have been friends for 20 years. So if you know Jason well enough, when you're in a relationship with Jason, you do a lot of listening. I mean, he likes to tell you about a lot of things, which is great because that's what I really needed. I needed kind of a history lesson. I've been meeting with Dan Entwistle too. He's given me the more extensive history lesson. Of course, Adam has shared his thoughts as well. And so we begin to coalesce all of this stuff into maybe a plan for the future. So I have 33 years of youth ministry experience. I started at a church in Lawrence, Kansas, at First Methodist Church when I was in law school. Was there part-time for 3 years, and then began my full-time career in Florida. And I've taught at Florida Southern College, which is a United Methodist institution, for 5 years. I've taught their youth ministry classes and done their internships for them. I have a nonprofit, or had a nonprofit, that I started 16 years ago called the Youth Ministry Institute. We train youth ministers in all sorts of different contexts all over the country. And then all of a sudden, I'm here. So that's the experience that I bring to this particular position. And I'm really super excited to be here. I grew up here in Overland Park, most of you know. I went to Shawnee Mission West, then went to Baker University for undergrad, and then to KU for graduate school. Megan Del Grasso, you want to introduce yourself? This is sometime, for some people, maybe online, is the first time they're meeting you, so it'd be important for you to tell them about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Megan Del Grasso, and I just moved here from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was in youth ministry in Pittsburgh just shy of 9 years. It would have been 9 years at my church in July. So before I was called into ministry, I worked at a community college helping professors incorporate community service into their regular curriculum, and that was my job for a while. And then after that, I worked with moms who are coming out of homelessness, teaching them parenting skills and helping their children get the services and support that they needed. And then God called me into ministry, and that's kind of been my history since then. So when I started at Ingomar Church, we had a really, really small program, about 15 kids, grew it to about 80 over the course of the years, did a huge shift in the way we presented programming. The programming when I started was really like country club style, where students would just come for fun and games, and really shifted it to a pretty intentional discipleship model, which was where students really started bringing friends. One of the biggest projects that I was leading right when I left was working with the local healthcare provider, one of the larger healthcare systems in our area, to have them provide free mental health services out of our church to support students in the community. I, along with a mental health team of individuals from my church in the community, social workers from schools, social workers who are practicing in the field, all kind of gathered together to figure out what was the need for students in schools. And what we found was kids were sitting on waiting lists for therapy and weren't able to get the help and care that they needed. So we got connected with the healthcare network, and that's kind of the project that I was working on when God called me here. So that kind of put a pause on there until they hire someone to fill that role in Pittsburgh. But I'm really stoked to be here. My family moved, like Steve said, in early December, and moved into our house, I think, on December 8th we closed, and then got our furniture like a week later. So we're still unpacking boxes and trying to navigate our life in Kansas. We don't have any family here. We came here for Church of the Resurrection and for this job. So my husband's looking for a job, and but my kids are in school. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, almost 3 and 6, and just trying to settle into the community, and super stoked to be here. I've already loved my experience with RezLife so far in just the really few weeks that I've been able to be engaged and get to know the leaders and students. So that's me.
Thanks, Megan.
Sure.
All right, so I want to tiptoe carefully here. I'll be frank. I think there's a lot of opinions on how student ministry should be run that we've heard over the last number of months. And frankly, there's about 1,000 ways you can peel a potato, and you'll never do it the same way twice. So I've chosen a particular path and a particular process intentionally, and I'm going to explain it to you. And some of you may say, that was the wrong way to go. And I'll confess, there is another way. There's thousands of other ways that we could have chosen to go. But I'll tell you why I did it, and hopefully you'll appreciate the reasons why. First of all, I knew that we didn't have a lead director here at the Leawood campus, which was the major campus in the system, right? And we needed to have that position in place really before we began to move forward, which meant we had to wait because you all had been working for 2 years to fill that position. It wasn't an easy fill. And I'm thankful we got the right person in the right position. I really believe that with Megan. But we had to wait until she was on board to do that. So we actually combined her, as I said earlier, combined her days that she was in town looking for homes to bring her into some meetings with the rest of our team. We were building the rest of our team, as I described earlier. It was really important for me to build team cohesion with a new group of people that hadn't really been part of one another before and then hadn't been part of Church of the Resurrection before. That was really critically important. So I chose to work with that group of people. We met 3 times over the course of 3 different days, 12 total hours, to begin to really pick apart student ministry and adolescent development and begin to match those things together in order to help young people be discipled in a meaningful way. So the idea was, what do we want a teenager to look like when they graduate from RezLife in 12th grade? What is that going to look like? So we chose that path and process. And then my idea was that at the end of that, then we would be able to come to stakeholders like yourself and say, okay, this is what we have so far. What do you think? And what kind of other input can you give us? What are we missing? What are our blind spots here? So that's what tonight is all about. Now, unfortunately, we had holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas that we had to deal with, and there would have been less of you if we had met during those times. And Megan didn't get her furniture until the 16th of December. So it was a really tight window to do that kind of stuff. Air mattresses on the ground, right. So this is the part of the process where you have some input. Now, we did this at the West campus on Sunday, and a person asked, have you included students in this process? And the answer is no, we haven't. Now, that actually goes against every grain of my youth ministry experience. Including students is vitally important in terms of planning. And as we put this together, we're going to continue to include students, or we're going to include students in how we begin to implement this and what it looks like. And we're totally willing to change things that really don't meet the students' needs. But we're not going to presuppose what meets their needs or doesn't meet their needs at this point. We're going to engage them and try to get them excited about what we've planned and then get their feedback as we develop student leadership. COVID has done a little bit of a tricky thing on all of us, all churches everywhere actually, is that leadership, student leadership, has been non-existent at most churches across the country because it's hard to engage them in meaningful student leadership. It isn't like pre-COVID times where you bring everybody together, you have a little planning meeting, and then you go and implement that. And at the Leawood campus, I'm not sure if it operated that way anyhow. I mean, it's a big ministry that was really staff-driven for a very long time. So, but we still plan, and we want student feedback because students are the most important part of this whole equation. I'm just telling you, that's the method I chose. You can definitely poke holes in it. I have. But it was really important for me to develop a sense of team with our RezLife team, to get all of them at every location to buy into the direction that we were planning, and then go to the locations to you all to get information back from you all as to what you think about it. So that's kind of where we're at right now. It means that what I present today isn't published anywhere other than what you're going to see today. I probably won't be willing to send it to you because I would be fearful that you would say to somebody else, this is exactly what they're doing. It's not exactly what we're doing yet. It needs to be modified based on what you all say. I meet with Adam on Thursday. I think he'll have some opinions, right? And I think I'll have to make some adjustments based on what he says. So all of that stuff is input that we're still receiving. So anyhow, that's where we are right now. And what I would like to ask to kind of kick this off is if you could think about your students, the students that you work with, what are the 3 most prevalent needs that you think students face, the students that you work with? So if you think about them, what are they? And we're going to write them up here on the board. Acceptance. Great. Thank you. They need to be heard. Yeah. Thank you. Jake, right? Community and fellowship. Great. Thanks. Yeah, mental health is a big issue, and that was a pre-COVID issue too, by the way. I don't know if you remember, but there were lots of studies pre-COVID about the mental health of students and their declining mental health and the issues that they were struggling with. Social media contributed to that, but definitely COVID has contributed to that as well. And lots of studies coming out about masks and all this stuff. Yeah. Jake? An environment that feels safe. Thank you. And I would say to our online audience, if you have anything, then go ahead and add that in the chat. Todd did have a microphone next to him, but he can yell loud enough I can hear him. So, yes, Melanie. Safe place to ask questions. Yeah, great. Thank you. Tom, they want to be challenged? Is that what you said? Okay, they want to be challenged. Affirmation and encouragement. Thank you, Bill. They still want to have fun, yes. Of course they do. Yeah, we do too, right? Sorry we didn't have like an opening icebreaker game for you guys to do. We should have probably done that. A little knots game or something. What else? Yeah, well, yeah, they need Jesus, right? Yes. Yeah. Well, they need what Jesus offers, right? And all the things we've written up there is true what Jesus offers us. Love and acceptance, affirmation for who we are, security. The church has something incredible to offer young people that they actually need. Well, let's, Megan, if you could move that back a little bit. So, yeah, Todd, we've got something online.
We've got a few things from online. Beth Trimmer said friendship.
Friendship.
Holly Crosby said authentic connection. Kirsten Young said consistency. And then James has asked that we connect better with Matthew's ministry.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, by the way, we'll get to the end of this presentation. I'll tell you what we haven't done yet because there are missing pieces in this still. I mean, it's a developing deal. And part of that is connecting with other ministries in the church that we want to be intentional about, but we haven't figured all that stuff out. 12 hours is a lot of hours to meet over 3 days, but it goes by really fast when you're trying to really look at all of those things. All right, well, great. Oh, we tested it, and it does work. So I just want to give you kind of a brief glimpse of kind of what I think the state of RezLife is. I think it's stable. I know we have great employees at all of the locations, including this locations, that are really super solid. And they're committed, they're excited, they're collaborative. All of those things that you want in a team, they're willing to do. Now, there are other things too, but definitely stable. I think RezLife is looking for meaning. When I talked with people, I heard over and over again, we're really not sure of the purpose of the entire ministry. We've kind of lost our rudder. We've got some great events that are happening. Confirmation's fantastic. Metamorphosis is fantastic. We have small groups that are meaningful for young people. All of those things are going well, but we're really not sure where it's all going, like the entire student ministry. And in fact, I think when there's a vacuum in that, then people begin to develop their own theories of where it's going or where it should go. And so that means that those who are really committed leaders, you all and others, have an idea of where it should go, and they don't always align with one another, as I've been talking with people, which is a little distressful, right? I mean, because alignment will be important. It'll cause less confusion for young people and all of that. But it makes sense. If there hasn't been a rudder that's directed the entire ministry, it makes sense that everybody else has determined where it should be going. And actually, I'm thankful that people have that kind of commitment and love for young people and love for their church to actually consider that. But that's kind of where we're at. Isolated. So young people are isolated. We talked about mental health stuff already. But I think the ministries, as we began to evaluate, the ministry itself is isolated from the rest of the church. There's not a lot of integration that's happening with other ministries in the church. In most of our locations, the young people, students, go to Sunday school, and then they go home. So they're with their age group, which is appropriate, but they're not integrating with other ages either. Now, that's not the case for everybody, but it tends to be the case when we're looking at the structure of the ministry and how we're structured. There also physical isolation. In every location, when you walk on campus, you don't know where the student center is. I mean, if you've been on any of the other locations, you definitely don't. There's nothing, when you stand out in this parking lot and you stare at this building, you only know that the Wesley Chapel is here, and you know maybe St. Paul's is there, but you definitely don't know that the student center's here. There's nothing on the outside of the building that says this is where young people are welcomed. And even when you enter the hallway back here, you have to be pretty astute. I mean, there's pictures on the wall, but you have to walk all the way until you get to a dark lobby area before you see anything that says Student Center. I would contend that that's not really as inviting as we would like it to be. And it creates an isolation for students, and then people that are looking for us in the very beginning, it's hard to find us. Everything's happening over at A and B. Now, I'm not sure if there's easy solutions there, but we have a capital campaign coming up, and I'm hopeful that we begin to address some of the student ministry needs in the capital campaign at all of our locations. When you walk into any of our locations, you see Kids Corps. There's a big neon sign that shouts at you. In our location, there's slides that curve down to the ground from the second floor to the first. I mean, there's something that we communicate to young families with kids that we're not communicating to families with students, middle school and high school students. Let's see. I think I hit all the ones that I wanted to hit. So then the last one is that students are stressed. And again, we've hit on this, but we're all stressed. In fact, we were talking today that I think culturally we're stressed because of COVID. Even if you're in a non-stressful job, you feel stressed. Like, I can't do as much as I used to do. So that seems to be a pretty consistent pattern of conversation. And so we're just going to own that that's part of the state of RezLife, that there's a stress with this. and the fact that most of the people I've talked to here at the Leawood campus are recognizing the fact that RezLife hasn't gone the direction that they think that it should, that there's a capacity issue. And so that causes stress as well. If we're not living up to our capacity, then what's wrong? And then I'm stressed about it because I can't affect that as much as I'd like to. All right, well, this is familiar. The mission of the church is build Christian community where non-religious and nominally religious people are becoming deeply committed Christians. So we want to continue to adopt that and look to that as kind of our mission at RezLife as well. So this is what we did. We started with the end in mind. We said, what do we want a 12th grader to look like when they graduate high school if they've been involved in RezLife? What are the attributes that will carry them through, that we think, okay, we've done a good job here at Church of the Resurrection with these students? So we just listed it on actually, what did we list first? We listed on the whiteboard, then we did sticky notes, and then we kept on coming back to it. We kept refining the language. We passed it in front of people. So there's probably even still more refinement that needs to happen here. So we said in their faith, we want them to have a full understanding of God's love, a differentiated belief of their own. It's well thought out and articulated, distinguishing truth, a faith that is ever evolving, compelling them to be adventurous and curious. And then a personal relationship with God, equipped with tools provided by the church to grow spiritual practices. We also said in their expression, we want them to have compassionate empathy for people who are marginalized, a full knowledge of their gifts, including a place to serve, an awareness that faith is bigger than self with potential to change the world, and leadership in the church, community, and the world. And in their relationships, we want them to be able to be kind to others by simulating the love of Jesus. We want them to have curiosity without judgment by engaging in healthy conversations with those who have different points of view. We want them to have the ability to distinguish their next community of faith by distinguishing communities that best fit them. In other words, they're going to grow up here, but many of them will not return here because they'll live in other cities. So we want them to have the tools to distinguish what will the next church look like that I want to be in. And then we want them to be able to seek out mentors as well as mentoring others, understanding their role in discipleship and evangelism. So as we think about RezLife, everything points to these things that we began to come up with. And there might be others. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. If you have others that you think we've missed, then we would definitely want to add those to our list. But we've boiled it down to these at this point. So as we began with the end in mind, we came up with a process. And this process, we simplified. So I'm going to start out with the simplification part of it, then kind of roll into how it expresses itself. We said the process, it starts with belonging. To say to students, you belong here. This is a place you belong. At this church, you belong to God, all sorts of things with that. We want to say to students, you choose. This is a place where you have agency. You get to choose your next path. We want them to feel like this is a place where you grow. You grow in your faith, you grow in your relationships, you grow in your understanding of the world around you. And then we want this to be a place where you live it. You live all of those things that you value. Live them out in leadership and in other ways. So we're going to break this down by ages. So we start with a 6th grader. The writing's really small, so I'm going to get my cheat sheet here. Make sure I've got it. So as we looked at adolescent development, we thought of a 6th grader, and we thought, what does a 6th grader look like? And Todd likes to make fun of my stick figure. He thought I drew it. I actually stole it from the internet. It's actually probably copyrighted by some brilliant artist somewhere, someplace. It's just not me. But a 6th grader, first of all, is a concrete thinker, and so they have to see it to understand it. They typically behave to avoid trouble, not because of any kind of moral conviction. They just don't want to get in trouble. They seem to have forgotten how to make decisions. If you've had children of your own that have gone from 5th grade to 6th grade, you usually, at least in my household, my kids now are 17, 18, and 21. But when my kids were in 5th grade, they were all brilliant. Like, they made great decisions, we had great conversations, and then when they went into 6th grade, it's like, what happened to you? You got stupid all of a sudden. And literally, the brain begins to prune information that they don't use. So literally, they do get a little less knowledgeable because of that. So that's confusing for parents, though, oftentimes. It was confusing for us, at least. They're looking for value from other people, parents, friends, teachers. They believe what their parents believe, their reflective identity at this point in time. And at this point, they're comfortable in their own body because their body really hasn't changed a lot coming into 6th grade. It's pretty much the same body they had when they were in kindergarten, just a little bit bigger, but not a whole lot different. That will soon change, as you know. So here's the process. So in 6th grade, we want to communicate to young people, you belong. This is a place you belong. So we want to have an event that leads off the school year called the Belong Retreat. It'll be a one-day experience where the whole emphasis will be on them, belonging. We'll have older kids and adult mentors that will be part of that experience as well to begin to help them feel a part of the group. We want them to be accepted and affirmed in who they are at this stage. At this point, we want to inform parents completely about the experience of RezLife and what their children will experience, and hopefully introduce them to lifelong mentors. And the design would be to be able to connect young people in 6th grade with adults who will walk them through all the way to 12th grade. And some of you here have done that, and it's been very meaningful to you. Our Sunday school, which will be our Sunday morning discipleship program, will focus on biblical stories of belonging, loyalty, and a tangible Jesus, a concrete Jesus that they can understand. Youth group will focus on interdependent skills and team building and community building, so they'll learn one another, but also learn one another's strengths as they problem solve together. There's a lot of low ropes kinds of activities that lend itself to that kind of development. It's perfect for concrete 6th graders to do something that's tangible, tactile, in a leadership building way. And then we want to have a mission experience after their 6th grade year for them. That would be a week-long experience, maybe 3 or 4 days, that they would actually go to local mission partners that Church of the Resurrection has already developed and experience what it means to serve in those areas, to understand the people groups that may live in those areas or that may be benefiting from the service in that area. We want them to be able to develop empathy at this point for people and people specifically in their Kansas City community. I grew up in Johnson County. I know when I grew up here, Johnson County was the 3rd wealthiest county in the country. And I know it's the number 1 wealthiest county in the state currently. So there's a big hurdle to get over here because I had to jump it myself to understand what it's like to not be in this county surrounded by the wealth that we're all surrounded with. And even if you don't consider yourself a wealthy person, you know what the county is like. And to get young people out of this environment into other environments gives them a better worldview of what the world is really like, and it gives them agency later in life to do something about it. So the RezLife result, we hope to be that you belong. You belong to the church. RezLife is a safe place and a fun place. Kind of going on with what you said, Jake, that this is a place where they can have fun at, that others genuinely care about you, that you belong to God, you're loved no matter what. You become interested in faith as expressed in the Bible, so there's some revelation of the Bible, at least of who Jesus is in the Bible during this period of time. and you belong to each other. Create community and friendships, welcoming to each other no matter the differences, including inequity. So beginning to expose them to the inequity in the world and developing empathy from that. Okay, that's 6th grade. We good? We're going to move through the age levels. Kind of get what we got? Okay. Somebody said yay. That's great. Okay. All right, 7th and 8th grade. I'm going to get all these papers all confused by the time I'm done here. So 7th and 8th graders are moving from concrete to abstract thinking. They're still good most of the time, starting to develop moral reasoning, but not really. You're just still trying to stay out of trouble. They make impulsive decisions based on their feelings. This is when the limbic system in their brain starts to really get active, and they begin really making silly decisions. You think, what are you thinking? Well, they're not. They're making decisions based on their feelings, which we all went through that. That tends to last throughout adolescence. They're still looking for value. They're believing what others believe, not necessarily their parents, so they're open to hearing what other people in their sphere of influence believe, so they're beginning to be open to that. And their body is beginning to change, causing confusion. So this is 7th and 8th grade. Some of you are nodding your head and say, oh yeah, I remember that. That was tough. So this is what we propose here as the RezLife process. This is the point where you choose. So we give them really incredible agency here to make choices. This is where confirmation is going to land. The metamorphosis overnight retreat will happen here. It's perfect language. Metamorphosis, this change that is happening, is a change that is happening in them rather dramatically over these 2 years of their life. So it really speaks, I think, to this age group the best. So this is where they begin to accept others. Like I said, confirmation encourages students to choose their own faith. Sunday school is going to be middle school Sunday school, so it's going to continue to focus on biblical stories of belonging, loyalty, and a tangible Jesus. And then youth group will focus on an introduction to the Christian faith. So again, kind of these foundational elements will be laid through confirmation, youth group, and Sunday school, and be reaffirmed in all of those experiences. For this age group, there'll be a mission experience in the summertime that will engage diverse communities in the region outside of the metro area. So we're looking at a place currently in St. Louis. I put a call into someplace in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Maybe go as far away as Western Kentucky, really not sure about that. We want to stay within a day's drive, like 4 to 5 hours at the most. So places like Oklahoma City and Omaha and St. Louis, those kinds of places. The idea is to expose them to a different community and maybe a different way of living in that community. So it expands their worldview, but not by a lot, just by a little bit. Oh, yeah. So, oops, sorry, got way ahead of myself. So you choose, for 7th and 8th grade, you choose your place, confident and comfortable in their church, accepting of others and not discriminating, understanding the importance of giving to others. You choose your path where they make their faith their own, they have agency, they learn about spiritual practices and spiritual gifts at this stage, and Bible literacy comes into play. You choose your friends, affiliate with a permanent discipleship group, possibly at this point. We're thinking at the end of 8th grade, although we haven't really had a full-blown conversation about what small groups are and what they look like and what that would mean, but in my mind at least, so this is just Steve talking without really clearing it with anybody, is this would be the perfect place after confirmation, after they've experienced a small group experience, to launch small groups that have meaningful impact, where they can discuss difficult questions. And we're not talking about Sunday school groups. We're talking a small group that would just be for discipleship. Your highs and lows of the week, your struggles and successes with being a Christian, how's that play out? And some of you run those kinds of groups currently. you begin having real conversations about deeper issues at this point. This is the launch point. When they're making decisions about their faith, we want to begin to challenge them with real conversations. And you invite your friends to youth group. We think in middle school this is happening throughout. Well, actually throughout the whole program, but we think people are most prone to invite their friends when they know that they belong someplace and they know that they're growing in confidence of who they are. Here is where they're going to be most apt to invite most of their friends. All right, so that's 7th and 8th grade. Good so far? Yay, all right, thumbs up. So 9th and, oh my gosh, my papers are going to get so confused up here. 9th and 10th grade. So continued movement. Okay, this is where students are becoming abstract thinkers. They project that they are good. They're not always good, but they're telling you that they are, right? I mean, again, if you've had 9th and 10th graders in your house, like our son is in 11th grade now, but for sure when he's in 9th and 10th grade, he could do no wrong. That's what he would tell us all the time. I've got this. I'm perfect. He wouldn't say the word perfect, but he would say other words that would indicate that. So he was good, but we knew he was a human being, so he couldn't be good all the time. Impulsive decisions based on feelings still happening here. Cares about what people think about them. So really more emphasis than in 7th and 8th grade on what other people think about them. It's interesting. When I was in middle school, this was really happening at a younger age, but I think it's moved up to 9th and 10th grade. That's when they express that more. They express it in what they wear and what they do and what they say about others. And here's where they believe what their friends believe. So they've actually moved beyond reflective identity from their parents. They've moved it over to their friends, and now they're reflecting fully their friends. And they experience institutional abandonment and egocentric abstraction. These are two academic terms coined by Chap Clark in a book that he wrote several years ago. I still believe that it's true today. Institutional abandonment is where young people feel like the very institutions that were developed to support them and help them along the way have abandoned them and care more about the institution instead of about themselves. And the church can fall into that trap as well. When we care more about the church continuing and the church surviving, or our student ministry surviving and moving forward, than we care about the individual students, then we fall into this institutional abandonment trap, and young people can sniff that out and know what's going on. It's happened in the school systems largely with standardized testing, sports to a certain degree where they're overworked and they think they're going to get to a particular level, and many of them don't. Egocentric abstraction is another kind of interesting term. And they're abstract thinkers, and they're very ego-centered. Chap says that people who experience egocentric abstraction, they know what they should do to help others, but they just choose not to do it. So here is where we want to encourage them to grow. We actually want to lean into some of this egocentric piece and value them to the extent that we continue to give them agency and say, not only can you make your own choices, but you actually can lead. And we're going to actually depend on you to lead. It's interesting. This was the hardest one for our team to begin to think through. 9th and 10th grade is, I think, the hardest age level, period. It's where we begin to see attrition in most church youth groups. And I think it's because we don't know how to engage them. And as we began to share around the room, everybody on our team said, you know, when I really became more committed to the church is when I was asked to be in some sort of leadership role in the church, and that happened in 9th grade or 10th grade. And then it was like, for me, it was like an epiphany. Oh, that's it. This is where we actually need to engage other people to say, we don't want you just to own your faith, but we want you to be a leader in your faith. So at this point, we want them to have authentic small group experiences with discussions on difficult topics. Sunday morning discipleship focuses on leadership development. So if you think about this in terms of Confirmation 1.0, this would be Confirmation 2.0. This would be a curriculum that would be designed to meet 9th and 10th graders right where they need to be met and allow them to develop those leadership skills and then engage them in leadership activities in the church. So being very intentional about how we do that. Youth group focuses on relevant topics and Christian problem solving, again, empowering them to solve their problems using Christian praxis. And then a leadership retreat being a cumulative experience, a high school retreat at the end of the school year. We're kind of imagining this as to be a high adventure kind of experience where people are challenged, both physically and emotionally and mentally, to lead. And so we prepare them with this curriculum throughout the year, and then we go on this capstone kind of retreat. And then a national mission trip that alternates between an urban and a rural experience. So currently we're having discussions with an organization in Alabama that was started under the auspices of the Methodist Church called Alabama Rural Ministries. I've worked with them before. They do a great job of allowing people to understand what it means to live in rural Alabama, both today and historically, and specifically folks that were descendants of slaves in those areas. So they do a great educational piece with that. You work with people in rural communities, get to know them. So our thought is, our working thought, again, haven't landed on anything yet, is that we combine that with a civil rights tour as we come down to Alabama. The location is Tuskegee. So we come through Birmingham and do a little civil rights tour there, go to Selma, and then back up to Montgomery and then to Tuskegee, and have this pretty incredible experience about what it means to live in rural Alabama, both in 2021 and maybe what it meant to live there 200 years ago, and what that history has done to that community, and what the hope and the promises of the future. We want to combine that with the following year going to an urban experience. So this would be a shift, by the way, in how we've done mission trips. Instead of doing 3 different mission trips that really don't talk to each other, we would contract with an organization and rent it out for 3 or 4 weeks and send all of our kids to that mission destination. So they come back with the same experience or a similar experience. They'll be with different people and have a different week and different people that will go with them. But they would have a similar experience, so that'd be a great talking point and foundation for what we talk about them for the rest of the year. So we'd alternate with an urban experience. The one that we're talking to but haven't had meaningful conversations yet is a group in Camden, New Jersey, which is just outside of Philadelphia, across the river. Camden is a historically poor community, very urban. They used to have 3 or 4 companies. Campbell's Soup was there, RCA. Within like a 7-year period, all of them ceased to operate there and just devastated the community for the next 70 years. So Urban Promise is an organization that has gone in to actually not work with the adults, to only work with the children and young people and help them go to college, and then help them move back into the community to contribute to the community. So it's been this really dynamic community turnaround based on the people who actually live there. That's why it always upsets me when people make reference to an urban community as the hood, because people actually choose to live in those communities. That's their home. And that's where I learned that in Camden, New Jersey. This was a horrible place to live, but this was the home of people, that people were choosing to be there because they loved it so much. So that transformation, I think, it happened to me, it happened in the students that I've taken there as well, and I'm hopeful that kind of transformation would happen for our students as well. And if it's not Camden, New Jersey, it's some other community that would be likely positioned that would help us understand what it means to live in an urban center. I think it allows them to understand what Kansas City, Missouri is all about, and maybe have a different view of Kansas City, Missouri as well, if they go to a different place and come back and apply those lessons here. So the RezLife process in 9th and 10th grade would be, you grow understanding you. Oh, forgot my cheat sheet. Sorry. Sorry. Oh, there it is. Understanding you, living out spiritual gifts through express leadership roles, authentic small group experience, navigate choices and relationships and priorities, values, and faith. You grow understanding faith, begin to be a disciple that creates disciples. You understand your faith through biblical literacy and expression of aligned as your faith aligns. Understand your role in the church, learn leadership principles and skills, mentor younger students, and understanding the world, introduction to discussions on difficult topics, create a safe and affirming environment for others unlike themselves. Okay, 9th and 10th grade. We're in the home stretch. Okay. 11th to 12th grade. So at this point, our hope is that for 11th and 12th graders, as faith is becoming self-actualized, they have identifiable values that begin to align with their behaviors. They're still prone to impulsive decisions, but they begin to, again, align those behaviors with what they believe, and faith begins to integrate into those decisions. So at this point, our Sunday morning discipleship process would focus on clarifying personal beliefs and addressing difficult questions. So this is what Bill and company have started with the This I Believe. I've run a similar curriculum for about 19 years as well. That's pretty powerful for young people to begin to express their stated beliefs at this point in their life. So youth group focuses on difficult topics and Christian problem solving. And then a graduation event involves a compilation statement of belief book for the congregation. So right now we produce a This I Believe book that we give out to the students. I think the entire congregation at all locations needs to see the effect that they've had on young people in this church. They need to read it. And to give them a book that says, this is what you've done when you contribute to your church, and whether you've actually done anything else other than give money, this is what you've done to affect the lives of young people and how they've developed their own faith. That's the powerful statement we need to make to the church at the compilation of their experience here in RezLife. So 11th graders will be tagged to be site leaders on mission trips, on the high school mission trip. So they're actually given specific leadership responsibility. And then 12th graders will have an option to also go on an international trip that would take off right after school's out in early June. So that would kind of be a culmination of their experience. Again, broadening their understanding of cultures and how God works in the world, not only in their country but outside of their country. So as part of this process, you live it in your faith. Things are beginning to come together. Your faith is integrating with abstract theology and challenging questions. You're actively using spiritual practices, able to engage with other faiths without judgment, and exercising an amount of self-care. You live it in your leadership, be able to start and lead a small group or Bible study. That would be encouraged at this stage. Start a social justice initiative of some sort, and then you live it in the world. Embrace a realistic worldview by experiencing other cultures and viewpoints. So at this point in development of young people, we also want to be able to push in this decision-making process, push what is called by James Marcia moratorium. This is where young people begin to question the faith handed to them. So it allows them in small groups and in beginning to decipher what they believe and what they don't believe. It allows them to deal and grapple with those questions that they're going to have in college. It allows them to do it in high school and come up with something that's cohesive and tangible for them at this point. We also want them to be able to explore vocation as a part of their deepening understanding of their faith and purpose in life. And that vocation could be a Christian vocation in ministry, or it could be a vocation in something that's not ministry related, but that has ministry overtones to it based on their own personal beliefs. Okay. So I've kind of described to you this process of 6th grade all the way through 12th grade. Again, I'm going to ask your input here in a few minutes, but I just want to go over kind of the high points because I've really described some interrelated systems that I kind of want to flesh out a little bit more. So one of the systems is youth group. So youth group at this location is offered on Wednesday nights. It's offered on Wednesday nights at most of our locations except for Blue Springs on Tuesdays. So we want that to be focused on the non and nominally religious students, which I think has been traditionally how it's been focused, but I don't know if we've said that as of late. But we want to begin to say that a little bit more. That doesn't mean that our more committed students and more religious students wouldn't come to Wednesday night. It probably means that they would show up more often because they would see purpose to what Wednesday night was doing in terms of their own faith development, and they would want to facilitate that. So we want to come up with middle school topics that are appropriate and high school topics, so be more topically driven with the infusion of Scripture into those topics. So Sunday school discipleship will look a lot like it does now, with a middle school Sunday school happening with these biblical stories. Confirmation would be part of that as well. And then the additions would be a leadership curriculum that we would write, and This I Believe curriculum that we'd write for high schoolers. That we would take them through that process of becoming becoming a disciple of Jesus. I was going to say a better one. That didn't sound right, though. But at least challenge them to on some of those faith principles, on what they believe and how they live out that belief in leadership. So the way that sets up on Sunday morning, just like confirmation, it's not going to be an every week kind of a thing. So we're still in discussions on what do we do with those off weeks that we're not offering any kind of curriculum. Do we have like a worship morning where our band plays and we actually have a worship service that's really tuned into the youth? Because right now we kind of dabble in it. We touch it. Like we do 2 songs. It just feels like, here, I'm going to give you a piece of candy, but only like the corner of the candy, and you get the rest of it later. So we'd like to do more of that kind of an experience where it's more of a full-blown worship experience that would be 45 minutes or an hour or somewhere around that length of time. Maybe students would speak at it. Maybe some of our staff would speak at it, but it would be more of an engaging kind of experience. And there's all sorts of different things that we could do during that. We haven't really fleshed that out. But what I do know is we want to have entry points for people who maybe not in a class. And right now they can come and attend a class that they're not officially enrolled for. I mean, I know that Bill's had some people that have come to the This I Believe class once or twice that weren't totally committed to that. And I know that I'm sure that some of you have had the same. So that will still be okay. But we want to create some entry points throughout the year to pick up kids that may have not had that opportunity yet to be introduced to the curriculum that we have. So that'd be the curriculum on Sunday morning. So here, the discipleship, 9 o'clock, we want to encourage people to go to the 11 o'clock worship service. We want to really live into the Foundry service. We want that to be an intergenerational experience where young people are up on stage often, and so we're in conversation about that. We think the first time that will happen would be February 13th, and so we're excited that will happen, but we think that can only get better as we integrate young people more in that service. We think that that's critically important. None of the locations are doing that well. So again, this isolation is happening at all locations. That's okay, and then retreats. So we want the retreats to be age specific. So we want all of them to have a metamorphosis vibe and experience in terms of what people come away with. But we want the totally focused on their own age experience and what they're going through themselves. So we really haven't come up with, the only good name up there is Metamorphosis. All the rest of them are boring names. So we realize that this will change as well. So leadership retreat sounds kind of like, well, But we really haven't talked much about that other than conceptually. But the idea with the leadership retreat being in 9th and 10th grade, and then a winter retreat, which we didn't talk about, and we have no idea what that focus is going to be about, but we need to do more work on that as well. But sometime in like January or February to do a winter retreat for those older kids that would be totally focused on their particular age level. Mission trips, I've described these, I think, pretty well. Again, a local ministry partners for 6th grade, regional trip for 7th and 8th grade, a national trip that would be billed as a high school trip for all high schoolers, and then with 11th graders being in leadership, and maybe some 12th graders who would want to do leadership as well, but we'd also give an additional alternative to 12th graders for an international trip. I can tell you, I had a conversation with Scott Crostek today, and there's going to be some designated funds or some restricted funds that are about ministry leadership development. So we've talked about applying those funds to scholarshiping these trips. So for 11th graders that say, I want to go and be a leader on the high school trip, then possibly their cost could be at a reduced cost because they've said they're going to be a leader in that capacity, or no cost at all. The same with the international trip, because we would look at that as kind of a culmination of that group's leadership experience, and make that a pretty wow experience for them as well. Well, actually, we want all these to be a wow experience. We want people to have incredible experiences. We think that really becomes the mile markers of how they grow. They begin to look back and say, I remember when I did this. This is what happened when I did this. But we think that there would be some finances that would be available to that. So milestones, so the kickoff event for 6th graders would be like, they'll be the first ones to get the t-shirt that we give out to everybody else. So they come back from the event sporting their new t-shirt that everybody else gets the next week, right? So they feel really part of this group before everybody. Confirmation ceremony is our milestone event currently for 8th graders. Again, the leadership retreat, we want to identify those leaders when they come back from the retreat with a name badge with their name on it, and it says student leader on it. So they can wear that, Church of the Resurrection, their name, student leader. And then leadership on the high school mission trip, and then This I Believe booklet will be a culmination experience for 12th graders, along with what we do for graduation. And I understand we don't do a lot for kids when they graduate from here. And I didn't know that until 2 days ago. So we need to do more, and we will. Okay, here's the missing pieces, and there's more probably in this. Small groups for accountability and support. We really haven't thought out that. It'll be part of this. We just haven't gotten that far in the discussion yet. Scope and sequences. We're in the middle of developing all those scope and sequences. So if you ask me what's going to be in the leadership curriculum, I have no idea. Well, I do have some ideas. That group's met already once. The 11th and 12th grade curriculum, Blake and I met over that. I will say that if anybody wants to be a part of developing those curriculums, we would love to have you be a part of that. So talk to Megan about the 9th and 10th grade, talk to me about the 11th and 12th grade, and you can talk to Todd or Shannon about the middle school curriculum. Communication plan, we need to really look at how we communicate with parents and teenagers and how that integrates. We don't really have a good handle on that. We have a newsletter that goes out every week, but otherwise we don't know how we do everything else. We need to do that. Follow-up systems, we need to be able to follow up with students when they come here and make sure that they get the right information and then the right invitation to come back again, and we need to develop that, and we're in the process. LGBTQ inclusion, we really haven't, we've had conversations about it with some LGBTQ leaders in our church, but don't have any action plans as of yet, but we plan to. And then interface with other ministries like Matthew's Ministries and Care Central as well, but there's other places that we need to interface. So the mental health stuff that Megan described that she did at her last church, we think that there's a place for that here in some way, shape, or form, but we just haven't had those conversations yet. Okay, so as a result of RezLife, students are accepted and affirmed for who God created them to be. Need my cheat sheet, I think. They're empowered to choose and act on beliefs among trusted adults. They are leaders with tangible opportunities, and they are confident in their belief in Jesus, clearly aligning with their values and vocation. So at this point, this is where we want to get your feedback. So Megan's going to come up and give you some instructions. We're going to do some feedback exercise, and then we're going to do we're going to launch into Q&A after the feedback exercise.
Yeah, so you all, if you're in the room, have a little dot on your name tag with a color on it. And we're actually going to have you get into those groups, but not yet. And while you're in those groups, we really want you to take 10 to 15 minutes to talk about, that was just a lot of information. And I am sure you have lots of questions already running through your heads, or things that you think, wow, that was amazing, I didn't think of that, or things that, that's something that I think is missing, or that's a concern that I have, or this is a question that's still unanswered for me. And so what I want you to do in your groups is to really start bringing up some of those things. What are the strengths that you see in this? What are things that you love about it? What are things that you think are going to work really, really well? But also, what questions do you have? What things are you concerned about? What things do you want more information on? And those questions that you have, we're actually going to work to address those here after. So I'm going to, as you guys get in your groups, I'm going to bring you around some Post-it notes for you guys to write down. So discuss it together, and if you could try to pick your top 3 strengths and questions, that would be awesome. If you come out with 15 or 20 or 80, we'll work with that too. But if you guys could try to rally around some common themes that you feel like are happening in your groups, that would be really ideal. So I think we have a green group and a purple group. I think everyone landed in those groups today. So I'm just going to split you up. If you are in a green group in the room, and you could stay on this side, and if you are in the purple group and could go to that side, and just kind of circle up and start talking through what those questions are, that would be awesome. And we'll give you about 10 to 15 minutes to kind of talk through that stuff.
So yeah, strengths, 3 strengths, and then 3 areas of clarification that you need more clarification on.